We live in the century where globalization is the main economic and political fact. It seems clear in global economy that protectionism and customs barriers are not the solution to the problems of globalization, but growth through financial groups or financial engineering in the securities market is not the solution either. In the 21st century, a society's progress and prosperity will come from the creation, production and distribution of competitive products and services. Competitiveness is thinking strategically and vice versa. Competitiveness is about getting into the future, into this future where we shall remain the rest of our lives. Competitive products and services need quality, efficiency, technological innovation and sustainability. We have also learned that all we have achieved, or all a society could have achieved, liberty, progress, welfare, are not permanent achievements. We can lose them, especially progress and welfare. In order to maintain them, we have to be alert and behave as responsible citizens. The societies of Tenerife and the Canary Islands will have to face complex problems. Problems that require people capable of being flexible, of critical thought, with intellectual courage and strategic vision. That is to say, people who are a source of innovation and creativity for our society and economy. Progress is implicit in the development of science and technology. The 20th century, especially the second half, is known as the time of the triumph of science and technology, which become an essential part of culture. Concepts such as the atom, the gene, and the computer become frequent terms used in conversation. We do not know how we will refer to the 21st century, but today it would appear to be the century of acceleration. And acceleration is speed divided by time, which is to say, everything is happening much faster. And so the strategic objective of our society, which we have to pursue, is to become a dynamic and competitive knowledge economy, capable of an economic sustainable growth, as well as of increasing and improving employment. A society with stronger social cohesion, having the appropriate infrastructures that make our region attractive within the world economy. Our world is more and more open, intercommunicated and interdependent. The essential infrastructures to attain this objective on an island are ports, airports and the neutral access point, the NAP. The NAP, which is the point of access to the World Wide Web of Internet communications, the port and airport of digital voice and data operators. Remember that 500 years ago, thanks to becoming a passage or a stop and an exchange point between Europe, Africa and America, Tenerife and the rest of the Canary Islands, but mainly Tenerife, became a prosperous business center. Today, the NAP is the beginning of a new trip, this time towards the future, which is precisely Africa and Latin America. We will be sailing in a much more powerful and universal ship, the one of telecommunications and innovation, which travels at the speed of light. Connectivity implies competitiveness. In order to be competitive, we need connectivity, and to be connected, we also need to be competitive. How did this project that we are presenting today start? In 2005, the European Commission published a report made by Portuguese, Spanish and French specialists comparing insular ultra-peripheral regions with their corresponding continental territories. That's to say, Madeira and the Azores with mainland Portugal, the Canary Islands with mainland Spain, and the French ultra-peripheral territories with mainland France. The conclusion was tough. European Union insular ultra-peripheral regions are less and less competitive and are increasingly moving away from progress and prosperity compared to their mainland territories. There were two main causes. Firstly, the cost of telecommunications, and secondly, the progressive weakening of the ICT, Information and Communication Technologies sector. And in a globalization economy, nothing is possible without progress in the data transport market. An invisible industry, incomprehensible to the majority of citizens, despite being extremely important. An optic fiber cable, an engineering marvel able to transmit 50,000 conversations, 800 millions of simultaneous telephone conversations, 800,000 emails per second is something as simple as this. It's a true engineering marvel, and this is the actual cable, the one we are deploying between the Canary Islands and the mainland. The optic fiber is the 8 small filaments in the middle. The rest is all protection material. In 2006, we alone embarked on this project with the clear objective of transforming Tenerife and the Canary Islands into the information technological platform for Africa, America, and Europe, as well as obviously having quantity and quality wideband capacity at competitive prices, allowing access to all operators. We made an action plan, and firstly we contacted 2 institutions, the Directorate General for Regional Policy in Brussels, precisely where the report that opened our eyes had been made. We had a meeting where we made a specific proposal, and the person responsible did not quite believe we were able to do what we were proposing, and told us, "If you do what you are proposing, you will be 20 years ahead of the rest of European ultra-peripheral regions." I do not know if it is 20 years, 25 or 15, but the truth is that we made a huge step forward. 1 month later, we made the second trip to the city of Miami, whose county, Miami-Dade, is twinned with Tenerife. Miami is one of the world's most dynamic cities, as you know, and the headquarters of Terramark, NAP's company leader, is located there. This occurred between May and July 2006. On July the 25th, 2006, Bill Clinton visited us, and in a private conversation we had, I explained to him the project we had set in motion. From the beginning, he offered full support. He also told us he believed this was the peace platform, the peace aircraft carrier the world needed for aid to be effective to our neighboring countries, most of which are living in extreme poverty. We thus created the NAP, Neutral Access Point, at the beginning of August, with the following objectives: to transform the Canary Islands into a link between continents through the development of the NAP in Tenerife and the exponential increase of submarine connectivity between the Canary Islands, Africa, Europe, and Latin America, to promote the penetration of information through the increase of competence, building the development of Africa, providing a better access and achieving the liberalization of telecommunications, to be a base for Canarian and foreign ITC, Information and Communication Technologies companies, to operate in Africa and the rest of the world from the Canary Islands, from Tenerife. We also commissioned perhaps the most specialized Spanish firm on big economic and social impacts, which is the Centre Tomillo for Economic Studies, to write a book, which is this book here, written in English, French and Spanish, entitled The Economic Impact of the NAP on the Canary Islands and West Africa. It analyzes in a very professional manner, in my opinion, the economic impact, the relation between connectivity and economic development, and between connectivity and GDP, Gross Domestic Product. And it's impressive. NAP availability implies for the majority of African countries a growth of more than 2 points in the GDP. You can imagine what this means in terms of job creation, etc. We set off on this challenge, now shared with the African countries. And the big question, which former President Bill Clinton also pointed out, is how are all these countries going to develop if they do not have connectivity? This is impossible nowadays. To develop healthcare, education, information, trade, even for more transparent political regimes, you need to be connected to the rest of the world and vice versa. We started having a shared challenge. We started having African countries as allies. The president of Liberia, the first woman president of an African country democratically elected, told me on a visit she made to Spain on International Women's Day, Liberia is a country in extreme poverty. It has been in civil war for 15 or 16 years. At the moment, we do not have the means to develop. We cannot even use Monrovia's port because there's a sunken ship in its entrance. But let me ask you something. When you draw the cable along the coast of Africa, do not forget Liberia. It's our last hope of escaping extreme poverty. And when I asked her how she knew we were tracing out the cable, she answered, "I was told in Boston." The president of Liberia studied at Harvard, at the famous University of Harvard, located in Boston, where she was told about the strategic projects we had, which her country needed for its development. In Senegal, we also had extremely interesting conversations with President Wade, who was also very interested in the installation of the cable in Senegal for the optic fiber supply by earth cable to neighboring countries. The same thing happened with Cape Verde and Ghana. The ACE, Africa Connectivity Europe, which is a consortium formed by 21 African countries, and the Cabildo of Tenerife, considers it the cable of African liberty. This was Nicolas Sarkozy's main message 8 months ago in the France-Africa summit. We are going to support this cable Africa needs, called the ACE cable, which goes through Tenerife. As you can imagine, this project is not at all simple. This is why nobody believed in us, especially in the possibility that we would develop it. We formed a small but strong team made to fight, full of inspiration and intellectual courage. It was the fight of a small David, much smaller than the biblical one, against a big Goliath, much bigger than the biblical one. We were facing multinationals, operators such as Telefonica, Ono, Orange, Telecom, etc., which are 1,000 times more capable than us. Besides cable multinational consortia, Main One, Orange, Wax, Ace, Infinity. They are not that numerous. They are 8 or 9 in the whole world who knew each other and did not like having some strangers rummaging around in their field, developing their own strategies. Thus there were jealousies, influences, scandalous signings, which normally happens when someone gets in the way. There are only 2 cable builders in the world. What's more, each agreement, each contract we signed with these big companies, with these big operators at a worldwide level, firstly, were not written in Spanish. All the negotiations were carried out in English or in French. We were thus playing on a foreign field, and, moreover, the first clause was normally that of confidentiality. That is to say, what we are signing here today stays between you and me and cannot be revealed. As you can imagine, it was difficult, very difficult to verify whether this information was true or not. We did not know. They were a very small group withholding the information. Therefore, we needed a team with a highly developed negotiation capacity, willing to make sacrifices, having multidisciplinary knowledge on law, economy, technology, and above all, full of intellectual courage and willing to make sacrifices. Thus, we started developing the projects. This small David made of 5 people, one of them being Mr. Carlos Alonso, who is going to speak to you next, faced all the big multinationals. But I hand over to the man who is going to speak to you about all this, about the state of the current projects. Let us not forget that we will set the NAP in motion in a very few weeks, about all we have been talking about. Cables, connectivity, operators who will be able to function, about breaking the monopoly, this new era we are living in. Mr. Carlos Alonso, Vice President of the Cabildo of Tenerife and one of the members of this team that beat Goliath. So, Mr. Carlos Alonso, I give you the floor. Throughout their economic history, the Canary Islands have known how to develop economically, mainly by means of exploiting their privileged situation, which is their geographical location. Several sectors have done so. The agricultural sector, for example, produced seasonal products which they exported to Europe before the American continent, thus obtaining a competitive advantage which created income, jobs, and welfare on the islands. The same happened with the trade sector. Due to our geographical location, merchant boats on their way to Africa or America stopped over at the islands, which benefited from the provisioning of the boats and from all the activities linked to trade. Tourism is the last example of this process. The islands' proximity to their issuing markets, the mainland, the United Kingdom, Germany, and the rest of Europe, meant a competitive advantage over other beach and sun destinations which could not maintain the high season throughout the year, like the Mediterranean coast, or which were too far away to be competitive, like the Caribbean. This is what the Cabildo intends to do in other sectors with the ALiX project. To profit from our privileged situation, which is our geographical location in an emerging sector, which is already part of the economy today, but which will be much more relevant in the future. The new technologies sector, to create income and employment on the islands and thus to position the Canary Islands on this strategic geographic location for the development of information and communication technologies. The Internet has been developing throughout these last 30 years in a process of slowly concentrating traffic in a series of nodes, which first appeared in the United States, then in Europe, and in the north of South America. We also want the ALiX project to transform the Canary Islands into a link, a node linking the 3 continents by means of the development of telecommunications, to increase the penetration of the information society on the islands, creating qualified jobs and economic activity in sectors which allow the islands to diversify. We also want to serve as a base for new technology companies to operate in Africa, Latin America, and the rest of the world from Tenerife. All this will be achieved with the ALiX project. ALiX is the Greek root of the Spanish word for sea. It's the root of the Spanish word alicio, trade winds. In the past, the trade winds placed the Canary Islands in a central position in trade between Europe, America, and Africa. We think the ALiX project and the development of submarine cables will allow the Canary Islands to play this crucial role of concentrating the data traffic between Africa and the rest of the world in the islands. To develop this project, the Cabildo has deployed a series of infrastructures of the highest level from which the island of Tenerife will benefit, and through it the rest of the world, especially the West African coast. These infrastructures are the following. Firstly, a data center, a neutral access point with a total investment of over 25 million euros, which will be functioning very soon. In fact, in March 2011. It will securely stock data, information and applications that circulate on the Internet. There is also a group of projects which will enable a better connection of the island with the outside world. The Cabildo holds 50% of the Canal Link project ownership, which will connect Tenerife with the mainland, Gran Canaria and La Palma by a new system of cables. Full of dynamism, the Cabildo has also participated directly or indirectly in another group of projects which are currently being developed, as the President commented, on the West African coast, such as the WAX project, the MCT project and the ACE project, ensuring thus that the three main projects linking Africa with the rest of the world pass through the NAP. Besides, we are already working on the future development of connectivity with Latin America, which is the third pillar which will allow the development of this tricontinental project. It includes our contribution to the amplification of an existing cable, which is the Atlantis cable, as well as our participation in the design of a new cable project joining Latin America with Southern Europe. Together with these projects of external connectivity, the Cabildo also wants to favor local populations by means of a development project of a main network which is currently being carried out and is due to be completed during this year's first quarter. It will entail the creation of a new optic fiber market on the island, as well as increasing the number of services and operators in Tenerife. All in all, it's a private and public investment of more than 110 million euros, which will ensure the creation of nearly 1,000 qualified jobs on the island, and will thus give a decisive impulse to Tenerife's and the Canary Islands' participation in the information society. This project will completely revolutionize the island's connectivity with the outside world, not only with the mainland, but also with the rest of the world. Connectivity is currently being controlled by a sole operator who uses a cable system based on the international cables which pass through the islands on their way to Europe and America or to Africa, such as the SAT cables and the Atlantis cable, which constituted a system of cables that enabled the connection of the islands with the rest of the world, but was controlled by a sole operator. This is today's picture. Tomorrow's picture will be completely different. Very soon in the current year, we will no longer have restrictions due to a sole operator's controlling input and output, and we will be totally connected with future African cable projects. We will have more cables, which is already very important, and we will be linked to all African projects connecting Africa with the rest of the world. And what's more, it will all be carried out in an open and competitive way, allowing a considerable reduction in the cost of connecting the islands with the outside world. This project would not make sense without an infrastructure capable of stocking the data and applications circulating on the Internet. This infrastructure is the NAP, the Neutral Access Point, which will be located in the south of the island, in Granadilla. Its construction is almost completed. It will open its doors in March 2011. We have already built approximately 60% of the total surface. It will completely revolutionize the telecommunications business on the islands. This system has been designed as a high-capacity redundant system, so that it will keep functioning in case of any meteorological event or other. Even if there was a general power cut on the island, the NAP would keep on functioning, thus ensuring data quality and security on its net. The NAP will be totally connected with the cables we have mentioned. In a final phase, nearly 7,500 square meters of raised floor will come into service. It's a very important infrastructure which has already been awarded the European Best Data Center of the Year award. Moreover, it will increase the capacity and possibilities of development of new technologies, not only in Tenerife, but also in the whole of Africa. It's also an extendable project which can be developed in successive modules to reach a total surface of 7,500 square meters. It was ecologically designed. The total energy the data center consumes is less than the renewable energy sources produce in the same data center and in the ITER, Renewable Energies Technological Institute. It's the only case of a data center with a positive energy net balance in favor of renewable energies, and maybe this is why it was awarded the prize. In the end, due to the Cabildo's initiative and due to the development of the NAP as well as of exterior and local connectivity, we shall enter a virtuous circle, which means that a bigger and better infrastructure offer will reduce companies, families, and the whole population's connectivity costs. There will be new services and therefore an increased penetration of the information society, which will entail the development of information and communication technologies infrastructures at a worldwide level on the island, thus placing the Canary Islands and especially Tenerife in a central and very competitive position regarding the international and West African coastal ICT, information and communication technologies sector. This will increase the ICT sector on the islands, the number of qualified jobs and the number of ICT companies, and it will hence diversify production on the islands. The ICT sector will make a bigger contribution to the GDP and to employment, which will entail a bigger connectivity demand from these companies, as well as bigger telecommunications infrastructures demand, thus closing the circle. The islands will therefore enter a new phase which will be a reality as of this year, where we will have more telecommunications operators, more telecommunications services, more users benefiting from this project, more digital content, more qualified jobs, more quality in telecommunication services, and more wideband capacity for users at a much, much lower price. Thank you very much.